A room with a view. And what a view. What would you pay to have your back window looking out on a scene like that? Well, if you happen to live in Commercial Street, Scarborough, you could have it all for the very modest sum of just a few pennies a year. Mind you, it wouldn't be the view you'd be paying for. It would be the light to see it by and the air you'd breathe from it. Now, you may get your fresh air and daylight scot-free, but if you lived in Commercial Street, Scarborough, you'd get it by courtesy of British Rail. You see, that land out there belongs to British Rail, and they claim that the light and air which filters through these windows along this street comes directly off their property. And for the privilege of enjoying that light and air, they've been charging the residents on the street an annual fee for over 100 years. But if you think that's odd, what's even odder is that the residents have actually been paying it, at least until recently, when British Rail decided to put up the fee from 1 shilling or 5 new pence to £1, an increase of just 2,000%.
I had an interview with a railway official at York, and he told me that the railway gave us light.
I don't quite understand that. The light that comes in your window is by courtesy of British Rail.
And I said no, it was not. But he said that the railway, we were on the railway, they looked over onto the railway property, and therefore they gave us light.
What would they do if you didn't pay a shilling?
Why, they're supposed to, why they said they could make us boat windows up.
So if you didn't pay this fee each year, they could come along and board up your windows?
No, they couldn't come along, but they could to put it in as they could make us board them up. The law could make us board them up, you see. Or alternative, they would put a big, well, not a shed, but they could put a big palisading up there, I suppose, if they wanted to be awkward.
To block the daylight off?
To block the daylight off if they wanted to be awkward, I suppose, same as they did that shed.
Mind you, not all the houses on Commercial Street pay the fee. Some of them have been specially constructed without windows to get around the railway's regulations. And there are others, like this one here, where, so the story goes, about half a century ago, the occupants refused to pay the fee. But the railways got their own back. They built this shed.
Under the law of this land, an owner of property is entitled to receive light only from perpendicularly above his property. He's not entitled, as a matter of right, to receive light laterally across the land of another.
So the light that comes down on the top of my head I get for free, but if it comes at me sideways, it belongs to British Rail?
If it comes to you, no, it isn't a question to whom it belongs to, it is a question of the right to receive light. Only that, please.
But couldn't it be argued that if the sun is in a certain position in the heavens and if the wind is in a certain direction, you could be receiving light and fresh air from Commercial Street?
This has nothing to do with the point at issue. The point at issue is simply that, as they are our neighbours, and we have to protect our rights to build on our land at any time in the future, we have the right to prevent our neighbour from acquiring an uninterrupted access of light. Now, this can be obtained by a neighbour if he has the windows receiving light uninterruptedly for 20 years. And it's necessary for us to protect ourselves by interrupting that light at least once every 20 years.
That sounds terribly complicated to me. What would you do if one of these residents, and what could you do if one of these residents said, no, I'm not going to pay any annual fee of 1 shilling a year or whatever it is?
Well, there are 3 ways in which a landowner can protect himself. He can either actually construct a physical hoarding which obstructs the light to the windows, and provided he does this for 1 year out of every 20, then that protects his rights. Another way is to enter into an agreement with the neighbour that there is not a right to receive this light, and this is what we do. We enter into an agreement.
If they refuse to pay this 1 shilling a year, and if they also refuse to enter into the agreement, what would you do? Would you put those holdings up? Would you block out their sunlight?
It is possible that we could do this. Whether we would actually do it, it would entirely depend upon the circumstances. Nobody wants to be a bad neighbour. We don't wish to be bad neighbours. And this is why we suggest the easiest way is for our neighbours to enter into an agreement with us. The point is purely to have the legal satisfaction of a small sum, which is an acknowledgement that the light is not received by these neighbours as a right.
But you did try to put the fee up.
Well,
to £1.
this purely arose because a number of cases where these acknowledgements were small were being reviewed, and these people got on the list, and unfortunately they weren't taken off the list before the letter went out.
So
but we have withdrawn
now?
it. Well, we have withdrawn it. We have withdrawn it.
And they'll continue to pay £1 a year.
The thing is back as it was before.
In ending, we'd like to express our appreciation and thanks to British Rail, without whose light this film could never have been made.